showing up. Thanks for Andrew for organizing third Coinfest in a row. It's always great to speak at these things and gather with like-minded people. I think my presentation is about half an hour, and hopefully you guys have a question or two. It's not a very technical presentation. There's lots of technical information on YouTube. This one is a theme I've been thinking about lately. It's called the money myth. So first of all, who am I? Is this for the YouTube recording or for, okay. Because I don't think people really need this. Okay. So who am I? My name's Alex Millar. I became a sailing instructor as a teenager, and I kind of blame that on ruining my ability to have a successful desk job in the future. In 2006, I became a teacher, and I taught some history as well as math, and I really enjoyed teaching and learning about history. But when the first year I became a teacher was the first year that Khan Academy came out. And for those of you who don't know Khan Academy, it's basically YouTube tutorials that follow along the curriculum set out in most Western schools. And a lot of university professors were advocating that we tell kids to watch these Khan Academy lessons at home, and then we would help them with practicing and implementing those skills in school. So I felt like I'd become a teacher and technology had instantly demoted me to a tutor. I realized that software was eating the world in many ways, and I decided to get into the software industry. So I got a job doing tech support at a database software company that eventually led into doing some consulting. I got to travel around the world. In 2011, I heard about Bitcoin, thought it was interesting, kept on reading a bit more and more. 2013, I was so enthralled about this technology and the possibilities that it presented. I left work and decided to study Bitcoin full time. And I've been doing that ever since. So I'm going to talk a lot about the history of Bitcoin. October 31st, 2008, a 9-page white paper was released by an anonymous person using the pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto. It described an open source software. So open source like Linux, anyone can contribute. In fact, Bitcoin has had more than 400 contributors and auditors to its open source code over the past years. The basic idea was to make a digital gold. There would be a limited number of tokens that would reside on a database that would be massively replicated around the world and updated every 10 minutes or so. The ledger is publicly viewable, and as of yesterday at 2:29 p.m., there were exactly 16.260825 million Bitcoin in circulation. Anyone can mine for Bitcoin. There's no sign-up process. You just need a computer, and you need to download that open source software and have a computer that can do computational work. The timeline for creating Bitcoin was set out clearly from the beginning. In the first 4 years, 50 Bitcoin would be created every 10 minutes or so, and that rate would halve every 4 years. So right now we're in the third kind of era of Bitcoin in which 12.5 Bitcoin are being created every 10 minutes. The key thing of having this ledger replicated around the world meant that there was no central point of failure. This was important because this is an idea that threatens the existing governments and power structures of the world. And people have tried to attack it, will try to attack it. So it can't have a central point of failure. And so far it's worked. So January 3rd, 2009, the first 50 Bitcoins were mined by Satoshi Nakamoto. And a few days later, the first transaction was sent to tester and developer Hal Finney. Hal Finney was a game developer. He worked on Adventures of Tron and Space Attack. He also worked on a program called Pretty Good Privacy. It's an encryption program to increase the security and privacy of email. And this undoubtedly led to his interest in a private money. Hal is an active runner. Unfortunately, he became the target of extortion threats for 1,000 Bitcoin. He was the victim of swatting pranks where people would call up and say there was a terrorist activity going on in his house, and SWAT patrol would come to his house. In August 2009, Hal revealed that he was suffering from Lou Gehrig's disease, or ALS. He died shortly thereafter, but he's been cryopreserved. So maybe if a cure is discovered in the future, he can be brought back to life. I think this is a pretty cool story that adds to the origin story of Bitcoin. And I think that's really important because, well, I'm going to read you this quote from a book by Yuval Noah Harari, which I've paraphrased. But for thousands of years, people have called money the root of all evil. Be that as it may, money is the only system created by humans that does not discriminate on the basis of religion, gender, race, age, or sexual orientation. Money allows people who don't know or trust each other to cooperate. It really is the apogee of human tolerance. So I'm going to step back in time and tell you my understanding of the myth of money, starting with gold. American civilizations or Aztec, actually I'm not sure if it's Aztec or Mayan, I'm sorry about that. They called it tears of the sun. And of course, back before the agricultural revolution, these were just heavy rocks, shiny heavy rocks that you couldn't trade for labor. No one really cared. They may have thought, oh, that's pretty. But it took thousands of years for gold to develop into this pretty crazy thing. This is an ounce of gold here, and some people won't earn this much wealth in an entire year of working. Some people who, maybe emergency room doctors, will make this in a shift. But it's absurd how much this value has grown. So it was beautiful, heavy, and rare. People didn't know where it came from. Did it come from tears of the sun? People didn't know. There was myths. You could melt it. Around 300 years ago, people started melting it and turning it into coins. This is one of the first coins ever in what is now Turkey, or made in what is now Turkey. People tried to alchemize it from copper, and I'm just going to do a quick interlude in economics. There is only so much gold in the world. This is the supply curve of gold, and it was fixed. As more and more people learned about it and wanted it, demanded it, the demand curve went up, and even though very little more was created, the price exploded. The value that humans placed on it exploded. So that's some economics, and I've heard it's a good idea to inject a joke or two into a speech. Is anyone here a Freakonomics fan? Does anyone know what Freakonomics is? Yeah. So my favorite definition of Freakonomics is supply and demand! Anyway. We gotta work on my delivery, apparently.
That was funny.
Here's a picture of an alchemist trying to turn copper into gold. People didn't know if it was possible or not to turn. It's very similar to people's lack of faith in Bitcoin right now. They don't know. It's new. It's weird. But by the Renaissance, the florin had become the worldwide money. This is a gold coin about the size of a modern-day penny, a little bit heavier. And this was used for every large-scale transactions in a lot of Europe. The salary of bankers or very skilled builders would be about an ounce of gold a month. So that's about 10 florins a month. This gold mania persisted into the 16th, 17th, 19th, 20th century with gold rushes around the world. And I want to emphasize again that the value of gold is entirely dependent on the collective, the shared myth that other humans are going to want gold in the future. There's nothing special about it. It's a myth. And silver too. I don't want to ignore silver. Here's a thaler from 1760 in probably what is now Germany. And while gold was essential for large-scale transactions, silver was really widespread and used far, far more than gold. And around the 1700s, this era of precious metal money became slowly replaced by an era of paper money, or IOUs, that represented precious money. So here's an IOU from 1797 for 1 pound of silver. This is issued by the Bank of England. And it was payable to the bearer. So if I owned this, I could trade it to my friend in exchange for labor or something of value, and they could take that paper to the Bank of England and get a pound of gold. And this persisted for more than 200 years. This is a 1928 IOU from the US for $20. Does anyone know where the word dollar might have come from?
Baller.
Yeah, it came from taller. So 1 gold coin was worth 20 silver coins. And really, they said they were on the gold standard, but this gold coin is referring to silver coins. So it's all linked together. In 1929, there was growing suspicion that these paper IOUs that were floating around as if they were metal weren't actually backed by the metal that they claimed they were. And people started going to the banks and say, hey, I have these IOUs, please give me my gold back, please give me my silver back. And these banks got caught. They said, we have printed more paper, we're bankrupt. And this caused a lot of fear, a lot of panic about what was going on with the world economy, and the Great Depression occurred. In 1931, the Bank of England officially suspended their IOUs. They said, you can't redeem these IOUs for gold or silver anymore. That's okay. Everybody stay calm and just keep on using paper money. And because people had been using paper money for 200 years, amazingly it worked. And people just kept on doing it. So Canada followed in 1933. And every other country around the world followed in the next 50 years, ending with the US in 1971 with the so-called Nixon shock. So that pretty much leaves us where we are today, with central database money and some paper money that doesn't represent any metal, and some cheap metal that is just cheap metal. Most of our money today is central database money. It resides on a computer owned by an authority in each country. So a quick poll, does anyone want to guess how many Canadian dollars exist today?
10 trillion.
10 trillion, I like it.
1 trillion?
1 trillion, I like it.
Paper money.
Total. Electronic money, paper money, and cheap coin money.
Living debt.
So the answer is literally no one knows. You can go to StatsCan, and I did, and you can download data about how much money exists, but they don't tell you how many dollars exist. They tell you how many M1++ gross exist, M1 plus gross, M2++, M2+, M2. They have all these different measurements of money, and every country has their own definitions about what a euro is, what a rupee is, how many there are. Nobody knows. But the fact, well, according to StatsCan anyway, the fact is, we can say without a doubt that the Canadian money supply is growing exponentially. It's growing at about 6.5% a year, whatever one of these lines you want to take. And oh, by the way, this is a trillion here. So a good estimate is between $1 trillion and $4 trillion. So the next question that I hope you guys are asking yourself is, who benefits from all this money creation? I know I'm not. I know I'm not creating any of these new dollars. Maybe you guys are. Maybe you guys have a friend, and I don't know. But I assume if I'm not, and I have Canadian dollars in my pocket, that when they create more, it's not a dollar, anyway, I have some dollars in my pocket, these things are being devalued. So I'm losing when someone else is creating more Canadian dollars. In other words, if Alice can make money for free and convince Bob to work for it, that's good for Alice. It's not so good for Bob. I'm not saying, this is Janet Yellen, she's sort of the chair of the US Federal Reserve System. She's kind of like Alice, or she represents some authority that's kind of like Alice. And I'm not saying she's the devil in this story, or she's immoral. It's just a system that's emerged naturally from historical circumstances. But if there was a villain in this story of money right now, yeah, it would probably be her. A little bit more about dollars. The cost of borrowing money in Canada, for banks, it's 0.5% a year. For businesses, it's about 3% a year. For people with money who can afford a down payment on a home, it's about 5% a year. And for people without money who have a credit card, it's about 20% a year. I don't know why there's a picture of a pyramid here. Yeah, I don't know how that got in there. So back to Bitcoin. In 2010, a programmer in Florida named Laszlo figured out how to mine Bitcoin faster. Everyone had been using CPUs. He learned how to use GPUs. He could make them about 10 or 100 times faster. I'm not sure how many. So he had so many Bitcoin, he decided to offer 10,000 Bitcoin to anyone who would buy him and have 2 pizzas delivered to his door. And this was the first sort of real world Bitcoin transaction. If you say 2 pizzas are worth $40, that meant one Bitcoin was worth about $0.004. In 2011, mainstream media coverage started to happen. How do you start the Bitcoin myth? People have to hear about it. And it's been really incredible to see how tenuous Bitcoin has been in mainstream news. So the first sort of mainstream news that Bitcoin got was about this underground website called Silk Road, where you could buy any drug you wanted, you could buy guns, maybe you could buy hitmen, and people heard about it and they talked about it. And it actually worked. People could buy any drug they wanted to. And while irrespective of your opinion of whether heroin should be legal, there are people who are addicted to morphine, heroin, codeine, whatever, and they have to go to a dark alley and meet somebody they don't know, whose reputation they don't know, and buy it. Well, this website was great for them. It meant people in small towns could safely order drugs online. They could look at from a reputable dealer and have them safely delivered to their door. The price of Bitcoin skyrocketed to $30 that year. Also that year, we had the first Bitcoin exchange hacked. MyBitcoin.com lost about $250,000 worth of Bitcoin. People didn't trust Bitcoin. This was bad. Enter the mainstream, the price fell to $2. Mainstream media got on board. There was a Good Wife episode that featured Bitcoin. Also that year, an image for Bitcoin was created. A developer named Mike Caldwell, who's really genius developer, really, made these beautiful metal coins with a holograph that you could peel off and reveal a private key, which I'll talk more about later. But this is a coin worth 1 Bitcoin, and mainstream media needed an image to accompany their articles, and this became the image of Bitcoin. In 2013, Cyprus imposed a 47% tax on bank deposits over $100,000, and people freaked out. This coincided with the price going to $70, and a lot of people said there was a causation effect there. People didn't trust the banks anymore. Banks are taking our money, hey, I want to control my own money, I want a Bitcoin. Bitcoin obituaries. People are saying Bitcoin is doomed, Bitcoin died, Bitcoin, this is the end of the Bitcoin experiment. There's a website with 128 times that Bitcoin has died. What year is this? I think we're in 2013. Another image, world's first Bitcoin ATM opened in Vancouver. This is the machine I used to buy my very first Bitcoin. There's Jackson looking happy. Price went to $1,000. It never stopped being controversial. There's Nobel Prize winning economist Paul Krugman calling Bitcoin evil. He says it looks like it was designed as a weapon intended to damage states' ability to monitor their citizens' financial transactions. So Paul and I disagree. I think it's not a bad thing to be able to do a private transaction as long as you're not hurting anybody. But Paul apparently believes that the state should have the right to surveil those transactions, and he believes that the emergence of Bitcoin is evil because it's threatening the state's ability to surveil. In 2014, the biggest exchange in the world, Mt. Gox, lost $500 million worth of Bitcoin, and the public again lost trust. The price crashed. Newsweek said they found out who Satoshi Nakamoto was. They were full of garbage. Jimbo Jones started accepting Bitcoin for lunch money on The Simpsons. It wasn't just mainstream media. The Bitcoin could never really have flourished without independent media. People like me who make YouTube videos. My sarcastic video, "Don't buy Bitcoin, it's gonna crash," has had 54,000 views. I actually just got my 200,000th view just a few days ago for all my YouTube channels. Yeah. Exchanges didn't stop getting hacked. The price fell to $275. But 2015 came along, it was the year of the blockchain. It was on the front page of The Economist. People said, oh, Bitcoin might fail, but the blockchain is promising, and there was all this hype about it, looking after land titles, supply chain managements, everything from farm salmon to whatever. Hasn't really panned out yet. There's also a civil war going on. Actually, maybe it's Bitcoin's third civil war. I cut out a lot of these headlines. It hasn't left the mainstream eye. People keep on talking about it. And I think it's testament to the growing myth of Bitcoin, how much presence it's had in the public eye. All along, Bitcoin's marketing budget has been zero. It's just software. Nobody's spending money on it. So here's my favorite graph in Bitcoin. It's the log graph of the price of Bitcoin in US dollars. So here's $1, $10, $100, $1,000. And you can see it went 30 down to 2. It went to 1,000 down to 200. And now it's back at 1,100 or so. So, I mean, to me it looks like a strong trend going in this way. And if we go up to here, you know, that's $10,000, $100,000 in 2 or 3 years. Transactions per day have also grown exponentially, 100, 10,000, 1 million. Here's Mark Andreessen, who I already mentioned this quote: "Software is eating the world. It appears that way in all aspects of reality." I have a simple premise. This is sort of my main, if I had to give an elevator pitch for Bitcoin, this would be it. Some people want to save money. And now they have a choice. They have a choice between a money that someone else can create more and more of, or one that is capped, and there's only so many units. And to me, rational, logical people are going to choose to hold a money that is capped because they understand supply and demand, and that money will tend to grow more in value over time. And as more and more people come to that realization and shift over, the value of that money will increase, and the value of the other money will decrease, because there will be less demand. And eventually there's just going to be this flipping point, where everybody's just going to have this mass realization that these, paper, this flag money with the queen on it isn't worth that much, because there's nothing that has no integrity. Whereas the Bitcoin on my phone has integrity. I know that it's one Bitcoin out of 21 million. So I think there's going to be an awakening, and people are just going to switch. So to summarize this whole story of money, I drew this graph, and the y-axis is quite skewed, but basically the value in money in gold first peaked, and then it shifted to paper money, and then it shifted to central database money, and I believe we're on the cusp of the next great transaction, which is to Bitcoin. And I've grown it exponentially because obviously hunter-gatherers didn't store wealth in money, and very few people stored money in gold, and now money is huge. So this is my favorite meme in the Bitcoin world. You can't read it. Neo's saying, "What are you trying to tell me, that I can trade my Bitcoin for millions someday?" And Morpheus says, "No, Neo, I'm trying to tell you that when you're ready, you won't have to. Because you'll be able to spend it at McDonald's or wherever." So coming back to Satoshi, I'm so thankful that he decided to remain anonymous, because as Lao Tzu said, a leader is best when people barely know he exists. When his work is done, his aim is fulfilled, they'll say, "We did it ourselves." And it's true. It's like everybody in the Bitcoin community is part of the working on this project together in many ways. Especially the developers. I would love it if I had more technical knowledge, and the developers have worked harder than anybody else, I think, to really fix bugs and build new features and scale Bitcoin. And they're doing a really fantastic job. And that's not what this presentation was about, but I don't want to diminish that. So for those of you who haven't seen how easy Bitcoin works, I'm just going to send a small amount of funds to the Coinfest Bitcoin donation address. So hopefully this will work. Just going to scan this address. There, I heard it click, so keep that, still worth money.
Exchange that.
Yeah. I'll send 0.1 Bitcoin, because Andrew's
Wow, thanks.
done a great job.
Coinfest will keep it until next year when Bitcoin is $2,000.
So that's been, I believe that's been sent. My signal's not super strong, but hopefully I can go to that address on the Bitcoin blockchain. And there it is right there. It's an unconfirmed transaction for 0.1 Bitcoin. And that'll probably be confirmed in 10 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. There's a demo of how easy it is. That's really the end of my talk. If anyone, I'd love to answer some questions. I have some technical stuff about security. If anyone wants to ask me about that, I'd be happy to go on. But that's everything. Yeah, Omar.
So you said right now your Bitcoins exist. I'm technically very savvy, but Bitcoin is stupid. Your Bitcoins exist on your phone.
Well, they exist on the blockchain, which is replicated on thousands of computers around the world. My private